100 years since the tragedy of the Great Kanto earthquake. It was midday on September 1st, 1923, when Tokyo was rocked by a massive quake. Over 100,000 people died. About 300,000 dwellings were destroyed. The capital was by and large leveled by fires. Since then, September 1st has been designated as National Disaster Prevention Day, with drills being held across the country. Today on In Depth, we remember the story of the Great Kanto earthquake in a dark episode that unfolded in its aftermath.
Disaster drills are being held across Tokyo, based on the scenario of a megaquake hitting the metropolitan area. The police and fire department are carrying out the simulations. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio also joins in one of the drills.
I hope the 100th anniversary of the Great Kanto earthquake will be an opportunity for people to think about disaster management and prepare for disasters.
100 years ago, Tokyo and its surrounding areas were jolted by an earthquake with a 7.9 magnitude. Occurring around lunchtime, it overturned cooking fires in wooden residences and shops. The ensuing fires all over the city, ultimately 40 square kilometers, claimed 90% of the earthquake's victims. This woman, who was 6 at the time, vividly remembers the moment.
I was sitting on the floor at home juggling beanbags when it started to shake. It was like I was sitting on a swing.
This footage shows the devastation. It is used in schools to tell children about the 1923 disaster as the densely populated city braces for a megaquake.
It would be a little frightening if something like that were also to happen to me during an earthquake.
I want to talk about evacuation routes and emergency food with my family before something happens.
Now, as we remember the centennial, we mustn't forget the other catastrophe that's linked to the devastating earthquake, a violent episode that occurred in its wake. Mobs took up arms, slaying fellow citizens. The victims were mostly Korean and Chinese. For some background, Japan had colonized Korea in 1910. In the following years, many Koreans migrated to Japan in pursuit of work. At the same time back in Korea, massive protest movements pushing for independence were taking place. This in turn worked to stir up strong Korean discrimination in Japan. Then after the quake, the unfounded rumors started. Koreans are poisoning the wells, provoking riots, and igniting fires. According to public records, various actors, including police, vigilante groups, and even the military, killed innocent people. The victims came from many groups, including Japanese political activists and Chinese, among others, but the largest number were Korean. According to estimates from a 2009 Cabinet Office report, the total number of people murdered makes up between 1% to several percent of all deaths attributed to the quake. That translates to anywhere from 1,000 to several thousand lives. But the government appears unwilling to formally examine and disclose what actually happened. Asked about the government's position on the massacre of Koreans at a press conference on August 30th, Chief Cabinet Minister Matsuno Hirokazu had this to say.
政府として調査した限り、政府内において事実関係を把握することのできる記録が見当たらないところであります。
This has drawn criticism from experts speculating that the government is avoiding taking an official position on the state's involvement in the catastrophe. NHK World's Ono Momo followed a group of Japanese striving to keep the memory of the slain Koreans alive.
A memorial ceremony is being held in Tokyo's Sumida Ward. It's dedicated to Koreans slain amid the turmoil following the Great Kanto earthquake.
絶対に同じ誤り、似たような誤りを繰り返してはなりません。
Hundreds of people have gathered to pay their respects.
I came here with the intention of remembering the Koreans massacred 100 years ago when the quake hit Tokyo.
The Tokyo government is increasingly under fire for distancing itself from this dark chapter. Until 2017, governors all sent messages of condolences for the memorial ceremony. But this tradition was halted by then-incumbent governor Koike Yuriko. And this year was no different. On the day of the ceremony, Koike was asked to clarify her stance.
行政のトップとして虐殺の歴史について具体的に言及し、痛ましい歴史を繰り返さないとする知事の意思表明は大切なのではないかと考えますが、知事はどうお考えでしょうか。
震災による極度の混乱のもと、混乱下での事情で犠牲となった方々も含めまして、すべての方々に対し慰霊する気持ちを改めて表すということで、私自身対応してきておりますし。
The memorial event organizers say they'll continue to press Koike to recognize the tragedy.
What she's done is just unfair and embarrassing. She should be ashamed.
While some politicians seem reluctant to engage with history, citizens are facing it head-on and taking action.
A lot of Koreans are killed by neighborhood vigilantes right here. When we asked seniors, many told us they saw Koreans being killed.
Retired teacher Nishizaki Masao has been collecting evidence for nearly 4 decades with the support of friends. He's committed to passing down the facts. He's guiding a group from South Korea around one of the killing sites.
As a teacher of history in Korea myself, it was a valuable opportunity for me to think about how to teach this dark legacy.
Although born in the neighborhood, Nishizaki only learned when he was in college that the Arakawa River bank was one scene of the slayings. Eventually, he joined a group committed to preserving the memory of the event. They even bought a piece of land close to the site, collecting donations to erect the memorial.
I was never taught about the killings, not at school, at home, or in the community. Nobody talked about it. We need to document everything that happened and re-evaluate it. That's the only way new facts will emerge. It's the most crucial.
Many young people are now active in Nishizaki's group. They feel what happened in Tokyo a century ago is not a thing of the distant past. That's because they are fully aware that anti-Korean sentiment is still rife, as they see in Japanese posts on social media.
I hope we can create a platform for discussing all forms of discrimination.
Minorities or differences in weak, strong positions can lead to discrimination and exclusion when something extreme occurs. I think many people aren't aware of this.
These millennials are the driving force behind this memorial ceremony, which has brought together more than 600 people on the Arakawa River.
デマに煽られた日本の人々が武器を持って朝鮮人に襲いかかりました。
朝鮮人を殺しといて、鬼怒川橋のもとに並べておいたんです。
東京で
The group reads out eyewitness accounts collected from interviews with survivors and recorded testimony.
I feel hopeful because today's memorial service is being organized by young people. I believe that our generation must seriously consider the concept of succession.
I think that by coming to these places and listening to people's actual stories, participants will feel obliged to share the history of what happened here. We should pass this on to future generations for 100, 200 more years.
At the end of the ceremony, Koreans and Japanese commemorated the spirits of those who died through the pomo, a Korean folk performing art that symbolizes unity.
We had a very large number of participants this year, and I think a lot of young people came to the event. I think it will continue to spread to the younger generation.
Nishizaki hopes this negative history will be remembered by the next generation of Japanese, so that such an act of barbarity will never be repeated. Ono Momo, NHK World, Tokyo.
It was very inspiring to see younger people refusing to be silent or complacent. They're taking up the baton to research, recognize, and pass on the legacy of this horrific incident. An incident that all arose from the unprecedented disaster that struck Tokyo, which unleashed deep-rooted discrimination, leading to senseless deaths. When people are pushed in extreme situations, they can let emotions overrule logic. Like the Japanese being swayed by false rumors in 1923, people today can easily be influenced by fake news. Disaster preparedness requires more than just physical planning. Mental preparedness is also key. That's all for this edition of Newsline in Depth. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.